Cachamaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome to GeoGearHeads, episode 297. I'm Daryl W4, back as usual with Chris of the Northwest. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
It is well. I'm struggling for clean air, but I'm doing okay.
I was going to say, I've heard some bad things about the air, but at least you don't have to swim somewhere.
That's right. Yeah, it's, if we could get the fires of the West Coast and the floods of the East Coast together, Iowa might be destroyed, but the rest of the nation would be okay.
All righty. Well, tonight we have Ron, the developer of Geooh Live, on once again to talk this time about episode about version 8. My apologies, Ron. It's been one of those days, but welcome back. Before we get too much into the actual content of the show, though, we do want to address that elephant in the room, which is the new geocaching.com guidelines. We're not ignoring it. We've talked with geocaching.com a little bit. They're not really ready to get on and talk with us about what's going on, because it sounds like there's still some tweaks that might be going on. But on the 26th of October, they're going to be on to talk about the geocaching.com guidelines with us. So we're going to get a whole lot more information and get a better feel for what's going on. Because right now I'm hearing a lot of things that don't sound like people are actually interpreting the guidelines the way they're intended. Chris, have you been getting that feeling too?
Honestly, Daryl, I haven't heard that much about how people feel about the guidelines. There is some very interesting things in there. For instance, you can't have events at large transportation hubs, say a ship cruise terminal.
Yep. And like one of the comments that came up from geocaching podcast from the Kiwi was there had been an event at one of the restaurants. It was a pub, actually, in a train station terminal. Mm-hmm. So is that not allowed anymore?
Oh, I would assume as long as it's a commercial location, it should be fine. But, I don't know.
Well, the problem is that train terminal.
Right.
And I totally get where they're coming from with that. They're afraid of that flash mob problem that we've seen so much of. Mm-hmm. People, even if you get permission, people don't necessarily know that this is a organized event that's actually allowed, especially if you've got those people just milling around flash mob style. Mm-hmm. And in this day and age, people get very nervous and tend to call the police, and then you have other issues.
Exactly.
But that's something for the 26th, and we'll get a better feel for what those are and why that's happening on October 26th. I don't want to either, but we're going to have to.
Okay, that's fine. We'll wait. We'll figure out some more questions and, work from there. So it's an interesting idea. It just, a lot of it is just simple clarification. And I'm always for that.
Yeah, and they tried to make it easier, and it does seem like these are overall much easier to read and understand than they used to be. Mm-hmm. But we did get some feedback.
We did. This came from, it's a great name, Tweezy Man. Now, I'm expecting this person always has a pair of tweezers with them, with a name like Tweezy Man. Anyway, Tweezy Man wrote in an email. Hey, you guys mentioned briefly that one of the reasons you wouldn't want to upload a picture to geocaching.com is that it would remove the EXIF data, if I understood you correctly. Well, I just wanted to give you a heads up because it looks like it may not do that anymore. I recently hid my first puzzle cache, and the coordinates were hidden in the XP comment. Once I uploaded it to geocaching.com, the data was still there in the data. Anyway, thanks for a great podcast. So that's very interesting. You know what? We should probably try it and test it out ourselves. It makes a lot of sense to actually test it. I saw today on Facebook that a fellow cacher is adopting out all his puzzle caches because his photos are on Photo Bucket and no longer work. Because Photo Bucket is no longer free.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just like, okay, I'm adopting them all out.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, you should just archive them and move on.
Yeah, well, and what bothers me about the photo bucket thing is that it's so expensive. Someone was actually talking about it's almost $50 a month, I think, if you want to be able to host the image or share the images on a different site,
Mm-hmm.
and that just seems obscene.
Yes.
However, I did reach out to geocaching.com on this one for the clarification. It used to be that we had specs as to what resolutions were permitted, or what it wasn't actually, I think, a resolution, but it was actually a file size. And I can't find any of that stuff on geocaching.com anymore. So they definitely have changed it from the information that I was operating under. And we don't have the details on it. So they're going to try to get that information and get back with us, but they weren't able to do it in the less than 24 hours that I gave them to look up the info. All right, so Ron, you came out with a new version of Geooh 8.0.
Yes, it's probably the biggest update I've had in the app's history. I put a lot more into it. It took about 4 months, I guess.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah,
And
it was a big release.
You're still adding features, including one that came from one of our listeners.
Yeah, well, right now the app has been growing based on feedback, and it seems like everyone's wanting to create their version of the app. So I get a lot of good feedback, and it's relatively easy to add most of it. So it's been going in there.
Excellent. Well, Cashers in the live chat says Geooh is getting better by the week.
Yeah.
So
I
probably
agree
a
with
good
that.
thing that we waited a few weeks after the release of 8.0 so that it's even better now than it was when it came out.
Yeah, it's up to 8.2 now. So it's keep adding significant things as I go on.
All right. Well, there's a long list of new features. Why don't you run through some of the ones that you think are the most significant to cachers?
Well, probably the biggest that I think a lot of people had asked for was offline maps capability. Geooh already had an ability to preload Google map tiles, but I added a feature to where you can use Maps Forge offline maps and even third-party tile servers, which someone in Sweden really liked that because they have their own tile server in that country, and they wanted to use those map tiles. Improved the searching, country and state, more comprehensive filtering, waypoint projections. Some of the things that I like is improved on the trackable scanning. I had a trackable scanning feature, and now you can also batch up trackables and submit them all at once. I have one of the beta testers who was real big in that, and he wanted to be able to load in a list of trackable numbers and just submit them all at once. It's a little bit like Log Them All, the website.
Sure. Now, this actually came up as a very big feature at one of the events I was at, and I got about 2 or 3 people at the event to actually go and download Geooh Live just for the scanning. But the thing that we quickly discovered was the scanning only works for one at a time. It doesn't do the multiples like
Right.
the TB Scan app on iOS does.
Well, you can scan them individually, and then they'll batch up after that. So you keep scanning it, and it adds it to a batch. So even though you scan it, you don't have to submit a log on it.
Oh, okay. So we got a little confused then as how that works. Can you give us a quick description? Because that is one of the big features that people are interested in from Geooh Live.
Well, on the scanner, you can scan or enter the TB code manually, and once you do that, it puts it in a batch section. When you look at this dialog, you can post them at that time or just close it, and then scan another one or scan another one. Or while you're in the dialog that's showing you the current list of trackables, you can load up even a external file. So if you got you're passing around a file of the trackable IDs, just load them into that. And then when you're done, you submit it. You can even select which trackables you want to post a particular log with. So you'll have a list of all the trackables. You select which ones you want to post, send them off, and then the next group, you can put a different log on it or a different type of message.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it sounds like basically what we were doing wrong at the event is we were not closing the dialogue.
Well, you could close it. Yeah, it's probably confusing, but there's a close button or a post button. So you can close it, and then the previous trackable you scanned will stay there, or anything else you loaded.
We were just probably reading that as, a cancel rather than close the dialogue.
Right. I probably should put some kind of instruction in there to make it look clearer on that. But yeah, that was one of the big things, is to improve the trackable posting and scanning. Another big thing I particularly wanted to do was a Where-I-Go player. I've always been frustrated with the Where-I-Go app on Android, and told myself I'd create one of these days, and I did. So it's a much improved player that utilizes all of Google's look and feel, design specifications, and it just has a better mapping and navigation component to it. It's really built inside of Geooh itself.
So it's integrated into Geooh. It's not an add-on, or
right. It's part of Geooh. I had anticipated or thought about creating a third app or a second app to separate it out, but I'll just put them together. So while you're in Geooh, you can slide open a drawer and select the Where-I-Go player, and then just run it from there. And so it just kind of they coexist together.
Nice.
Another big one is nearby cache notifications. So there's a feature where you can specify how far out and how many caches you want to get notifications on. So while the app is in the background, you could be running some other app, and if a cache shows up nearby, it puts a little notification in Android's notification bar, and from there you can load it up. It shows a little map of the location and your location. So it's kind of a nice thing. I've noticed I've been using that more than I even thought, that while I'll be out doing something, I'll get a little beep, and I know there's a cache nearby. So that's nice. Try to improve on the searches. Maybe there's a basic and advanced version, so it's simpler for just to do the some real quick basic searches. I've got logging templates, so you can create a template and store it on the phone, and then point to it. So you can have multiple templates based on different things you may want to cache with, and then just specify which template you want to use. And then when you submit a log, it pulls in that template. Let's see. The live map can now sort by favorites and trackables. So you have a list in the live of all these caches. Will show which ones are the most favorited, and that comes up in a list. One other big thing is additional capabilities with overlays. Geooh is the only app that does county boundaries and shading. Also added a capability of anyone can add their own overlay that's in KML or GeoJSON. So I've got someone who in particular likes to load in DeLorme boundaries. So this is another folder that you can put any overlays that you want, and then when the app starts up and shows the map, it loads up those overlays. So wow. You can create your own and for any purpose.
That's really impressive, because if you're going out and doing a DeLorme hunt like I do from time to time when I'm traveling, it would be really nice to know when I cross that map page
Right.
rather than thinking, I think, based on this map and this map sitting here at my computer, I think that cache is on the correct side.
Right. I've got friends that are iPhone users, and they sometimes want to drag me along when they do their county runs, because I will sit there. Okay, we're just about to cross the boundary, or I'll do the searching and see which caches are on where at in that county, and head us towards that. So it's coming. And I don't do that much on county hunts, but it's kind of interesting to see which ones I have found.
Jumping back for just a moment, Land Monkey in the live chat wanted to know if the nearby cache notification uses a lot of battery.
Now, what it's set up to do is that I think every tenth of a mile, something like that. So it only will do a search after a certain distance. And it also shuts down if you go over like 50 miles per hour. You're not going to be looking for caches if you're going too fast. So it doesn't do a search or doesn't use the battery thing unless you've gone a certain distance. Then it will do a search, and it only you specify how many caches you want to bring back. I think there's like a limit of 5, and the boundary only goes up to a mile. So you won't use a lot of battery when you're just doing the nearby notifications.
And then is that just from like cached cache data, or does it have to do the live API calls every time?
It's doing a live API call.
So yeah, so that's good, except that if you're trying to drive at the 50 miles an hour or whatever, you're going to be using up API calls like crazy. So
well, no, I said once you hit 50 miles,
exactly,
it stops.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so yeah, that's kind of mandatory just to save the API calls.
Right. So I think early on I was being a little bit too aggressive on doing searches, and I thought it was consuming too much battery. But now it seems like I don't notice an effect when I'm using it. And like I said, you have to go a distance before it will even do a search.
Sure. Yeah. Which, makes perfect sense, because you don't want to gobble up all those API calls. And we've heard problems with people on the live maps running out of API calls because they're driving, cross country or whatever. And, 4 or 5 hours into the drive, all of a sudden they can't make any more search requests because they've run out of data or run out of calls.
Well, there's an option in Geooh where on the live map you can say auto refresh or not. And it's like on the official app, you're just moving. I think it's always auto refreshing where you go. But on Geooh, you can turn off auto refresh, so you can go to a location a refresh. So it can save on the download count.
See, and I was thinking the official app didn't do the live refresh period, but that might be something that's been updated since I've last looked at it. Because quite honestly, the only thing I use the actual official geocaching app for anymore is the messaging.
Right. Geo's got a messaging component which it brings up the message console from Groundspeak. The only thing it doesn't have is a notification when you do get a message. But what I do is the official app gives me a notification, then I go to my app and I'll bring up the message center and respond there.
Yeah, and the big thing that I want from Message Center within the geocaching app, though, I do like getting those notifications so I know where to go. But it is annoying because it doesn't even clicking on the notification doesn't even take you to the Message Center. But I like being able to hit the cache and message that owner. And that's one of the big things I wish they'd open up to the API, just so that, maybe they don't do the two-way, but just the send the message to the owner and then get the notification back later.
All right. That would be nice if that was an API option.
Unfortunately, that's not going to happen for reasons.
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 Very definite there.
Yes. Yeah, they keep claiming security, which, I can understand some of that, but seems like there's ways to get around that. So
Exactly.
reasons. We'll just leave it at that.
Another thing which I thought was nice is that on Geoh, you can, when you select a cache on the map, you can turn on and display a route to that cache, so you can visually see which way you should go. You can always use turn-by-turn navigation to exit the app and use another navigating app. But you can also see the path visually on the map, and then as you're moving along, that path will continually update and will continually zoom in, so you're always seeing your location plus the cache you're heading to. So as you get closer, the map continues to zoom into it. So it's kind of a nice little thing, following on the map where you're going and watching it zoom in.
Exactly. So it's doing turn-by-turn navigation.
Well, no, it can. I mean, you can, if you do turn-by-turn navigation, you're exiting the app and going to like Google navigation. But if you don't want to kind of be heavyweight and bring up a navigation app, you can monitor your navigation or the route by looking at it on the Geodes map. So there'll be a blue line that shows you how you're supposed to go from your location to the cache.
Right.
If for some reason you took a detour, after a couple minutes, Geoh updates the route, so it reorients and shows you the route from your current location to where you want to go.
Okay.
So that was another new thing in 8 that I thought was pretty useful.
Yeah, so basically it's giving you the turn-by-turn route, but not the prompts.
Correct. Now, it's just a visual on the map. Here's, if you had drawn a line of the route of where you're going, from where you are to where you're going.
Yeah, which makes it really handy if you're trying to see I'm going to, the event. Are there any caches that are quick and easy along the way?
Yeah. So again, it typically I've used like Google Navigation, but you exit the app, and it's kind of nice to still see where you're at and maybe other caches nearby on your route to it.
Exactly. And you can probably leave Google Maps going in the background, giving you the voice prompts, and just use the...
Well, exactly. Yes, that will do it too.
Now, of course, if you have a cheap phone that doesn't allow you to run more than one app at a time, like someone I know, you might not be able to do that, period.
Why are you looking at me, Daryl?
No. My niece and nephew actually just got new phones because they switched to a new carrier, and they are very, very annoyed because they can't even run like 2 apps at once. The most it can do is Snapchat. They can't get almost any location game to work, especially not like Pokemon Go.
Wow.
It's really bad.
I've never heard of such a limited phone.
I have, but it's rare.
Now,
and it has like no battery life too.
I have to ask, if you selected multiple caches, would it show you a route between them? Or just one at a time?
No, that's another feature that you select multiple caches, and then it will give you an optimized route to them.
Oh,
so you can this it goes to Google, and Google tells you, okay, this is the route you should take to hit all of them, and it shows you another route line on the map, so you can follow that to reach them all. Yeah, that was in before 8, but it's still a good feature.
Now, I'm assuming it does not do this, but is there an option where you could give it a list of caches and ask it to sort them into the best order for like driving?
Well, that's what I was just mentioning. So if you have
it doesn't necessarily do it in the order that you've added them to the route, but you can tell it.
No, you select the caches in any order you want. Google's going to tell you the order you should go to them.
Excellent. That's always so handy when you've got this list of like, I want to do all of the virtuals in town. Just throw it at it then, and it tells you the best way to drive.
Right. And I think I really did this because there was a time when I tried to get a group of caches and didn't realize that one of them I could not cross a road to get to it, even though it looked like it was nearby. And if I had optimized the route, I wouldn't have had to do so much backtracking. It would have Google would have told me, no, you can't get to where you thought you were. Go this route to reach them all.
So conversely, though, you can still put the caches in the order that you'd want to visit them.
No, I don't have that.
Oh.
That actually might be a new feature that I hadn't thought about, but I'll have to think about that. Because what you could do, you select the caches on the map, and then you tell Google to optimize the route to them. I could just say, don't optimize it, just show me the route on the order I selected them. That's actually something to probably in the next release. Thank you.
Okay. Hey. See, this is the awesome thing. Yeah, because every so often it's like, okay, I know I want to hit these. I have to be at this event, for instance, at this time, and now I want to head back this other way. So, you know, there are reasons to still plan the route yourself, but it's so much nicer if you don't have to.
Right. So yeah, you could just, that's a good idea, is that the order you selected them, I'll present a route to it instead of optimizing it.
Now, meanwhile, in the live chat, Casher says that we're not allowed to give you any more ideas until you have finished exporting GPX files.
Yeah, that's on the to-do list. So I think the next major release, I'm going to export GPX files.
That's always a nice feature, just so that you can send the files to other members of your party and everyone's working from the same set of caches.
Well, and actually part of what I wanted to do on this is if you have an Android phone, you can export and send to it electronically to another Geooh user.
Yeah, so rather than having to like email it to them, it would just do it some way, somehow internally.
Right. Android has this nearby communications feature so that you can have two nearby Android phones and they can talk to each other and pass data between them. So that was kind of my future idea for GPX files, or anything really, is to be able to pass some kind of data between them, like the list of the trackable codes. So you had an event, and you've loaded them all in, you can pass them on to someone else.
See, now I'm going to make your life really challenging. I can see this being so valuable for power caching. Send the list of all of the caches you found today, you know, those log files, to other members in your party.
Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah.
So many more features to add.
Yeah,
that's so little time to do it.
I think I put the bulk of what I wanted in and what had been asked for in 8.0. And there's these things like the exporting that's on the list. It's been on the list for a while, but I just wanted to finish up 8.0 and then let it rest a bit before I tackle that.
But you know, we haven't talked about all of the features that were new for 8 yet, as I kind of like go through this list. One of them that looks kind of interesting is the sorting of the live map list by favorites and trackables.
Yeah, I think I briefly mentioned that. So when you're looking at a live map or any map on Geooh, you can slide over on the left side, a little drawer slides over, and it will show you the list of caches on that map, which just makes it very easy. You can select a cache in the list, and then automatically the map will center on that location or that cache. But in that list, you can, there's a button at the bottom where you can open it and sort by favorites or sort by the number of trackables. So that list will sort, say, by high favorites at the top, and then you can start selecting those, and you'll see them immediately. You see where they're at on the map. So it's kind of that's the feature of Geooh is kind of a side-by-side list and map, and they both dynamically work with each other. So if you select a cache on the map, it automatically sorts or moves the list to show that cache in the list.
But as I recall from earlier in the conversation, you can also still do filtering, or well, not still, but newly do filtering on the favorites and trackables from the live list, correct?
But not from the live list. What you can do is that in any list, you can, as you're looking at the list, there's a comprehensive set of filters, and either when you do a search, you can search by the number of favorites you want, or when you see a list, you can say how many favorites you want to see in that list, so to speak. But in the live map, there really isn't a list permanent for it, so it's not as easy to do that.
Got it. Yeah, because I was thinking this would be really, really handy to say, just show me anything that has at least 5 favorite points. But by sorting, you can just look at the ones that have the 5 or more favorites.
Exactly. And that might be a thing to add, is that instead of just sorting by favorites, you can filter by the number of favorites. And that would be easy to do. But I got to do the export to GPX first.
Which will make cachers handy or happy. And that's cachers with a Z.
Some other things something I added that I like, that I wanted for myself, is that when you are on the map, there's an option that you can automatically show the hint. So often when I select a cache, I'm going to it. What was the hint? What was the hint? So now when you touch the icon on the map, briefly the hint will pop up at the top of the screen to tell you what the hint is, and then fades away. So for those who like to look at the hints and don't want to keep opening up, drilling down to find what the hint was, this is a quick and dirty way to show them whenever you're looking at a cache.
Cool.
Badges. Now in the profile, you can see badges. It kind of do like GSEC badges, where the number of traditionals you found, the number of virtuals, things like that. That just kind of a nice little thing to see. Your personal achievements with some statistics. I mentioned waypoint projections. That's in the map. You can also enter coordinates or an address, and it will immediately center on that location. So if you're on the map and you know where you'd like to do a search, just enter that address or coordinate. It will go there, then do a refresh to populate the map with the caches that it finds. Let's see.
Caches also says that the cache info setup in Geooh is completely different from any other app, and it's pretty brilliant once you get used to it.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, I think the problem app is that it's the previous apps, particularly on Android. From the very beginning, Geooh was meant to be list oriented, and now Groundspeak apps that way. But you just think in terms of I'm creating a list for a pocket query or bookmark list, or you're doing a search and you have different searches, and you create your own criteria per search, and there'll be a separate list for those. And then you open that list, and then you can open the map from that. So it's a different way of thinking, but I think once you get accustomed to it, you wonder why you ever did it the other way.
All right. Now, you have that one feature that I've hinted at coming that's already been dropped in, that I just mentioned it, 2 days ago, and yesterday I think it was that you had it coded up at the request of one of our listeners who isn't even a Geooh user until that mention was made.
Right. Yeah, you had talked about they wanted to have logs and images from the cache log transferred automatically to a trackable log. And so that's been done on the image part. So there's a little debatable whether it's worthwhile or should transfer the log to a trackable log, but the images will now move over with it. And there's also an option and settings where you can visit all your trackables when you log a cache. So you log a cache, all your trackables do an automatic visit without you having to do anything. And then if you select the option to transfer images, all those visited trackables will also have an image sent with them too.
So the concept is if you have like your dog going with you, you could automatically have it dip the collar, the little trackables on the collar, into each of the caches that you visited with the dog, so that you get an idea of how many, or your car, how many miles you've driven, how many caches your dog has done just by the logs. And a lot of times people do want images on the trackable logs as well, so that you can go back and view that gallery.
Yeah. Let's see, other things, Nato, there was automatically now when you update a cache as found or not found, it will propagate that information to other lists. So we talked about this idea, you've got multiple lists. Some of those lists could have the same cache in it. And if you mark one as found, then the other list will have that information replicated. And so when you look at that list, you'll see it's found there also. There's a swipe to delete the caches and list of caches, which was something that some of the got feedback on what someone would like to see. You can move the cache database onto external storage. Android users like to use SD cards, so that the cache database can now be moved over there if you want.
That's a big help, especially for the users with those tiny phones.
I see there's a comment about multiple images possible. Not yet. I have thought, and I think I've got it on my to-do list to investigate doing that. So you can take multiple photos and attach them to a log. And if you do that, you can also attach them to trackables.
Excellent.
Daryl, I'm shocked you haven't mentioned your favorite feature in any geocaching app.
Ooh, what was that? Oh, we talked about he mentioned the log templates earlier.
Did I miss it? I was sitting here.
It was a short one, quick mention of it. But I would like to go back to those, Ron.
Is it a template for each type of log? I mean, you could do a will attend or an attended as well as a found.
You can create multiple log templates, but currently you select which one in settings to apply. What I want to do in the future is that when you're getting ready to submit a log, you select the template. You can also select the template instead of having it default for all logs. So right now, in settings, you say which template to use, and then all logs from that point will use it. Next iteration of it will be when you get ready to submit a log, you select the template.
Gotcha.
That's not the default one.
That works well enough. I mean, you're out with a group of friends, you're going to go find 10, 15 caches. You want the logs to be pretty much the same. You want a template to say, hey, I was out, on this day with such so-and-so, and then you can put in the details of, the log is wet.
Yeah, the one that I keep looking for, that Geosphere was the only one that did it this way, is instead of being like templates, they were almost like stamps, so that you could stack multiples, and it was just an insert in the logging. So I'd have ones for like each of the, it's the full link text for anyone that I go caching with on a regular basis. So I could, type them in my notes and go, I was caching with blah, 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 just tap it all out. Also have one for the FTF marker, because I could never remember what that was to make Project GC happy. So, that's one of those, it's more like a stamp than a template. So I keep hoping for more apps to support that. But I like the idea of having the stamps and the templates separate, so that you could have templates that automatically load by default, and then you could have the stamps to edit those. Have I lost anyone? Have I made it too complicated, Chris?
No, I understand what you're saying.
One thing about the templates is that the parameters that you use to substitute values when submitted, it's the same ones that that Geooh uses. So that if you're migrating from that app to Geooh, you could copy your templates as is basically, and use them in Geooh.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. All right, we are running longer than we probably should. Are there any last couple of things that you want to let people know?
No, I mean, we covered the major things that is new and what I thought was important.
Excellent. And we'll have the link in the show notes to get you to Geooh. And we've got at least one person in the chat tonight who I think is going to download the app and log their first cache with it tonight. Well, not their first cache, but their first cache in Geooh. Yes. So that's pretty cool.
From my area. So
we always like when that happens. Absolutely. All right. And thank you so much, Ron, for joining us and telling us more about Geooh Live 8.2 now, I guess.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on.
And thanks for being so responsive to all of these user requests, especially for an app which we didn't even mention that's free.
Yes.
Wait a minute. This is free? All these features, and you don't have to charge for it? That's incredible. You should all go download it.
Yeah. I'll put a donate button in.
There you go.
Always a good idea. Oh, he says, or she says, I actually already have Geooh. I like the noises it makes when you log caches.
Yeah, there's that's actually the friends I cache with always make a comment about that, because when you log a find, it does a ta-da, and then if you log a DNF, it goes bzzz. So you get these immediate feedbacks. I actually put that in after playing Pokemon Go. There's kind of a fun aspect to it when you find something, to get a little bit of feedback.
See, and now you've got my mind reeling, and I'm not going to say anything because it's going to get me in trouble. So thanks again, and we'll have you on again, I'm sure. Just a reminder, though, everyone, show 300 is coming up, and we still have those 5 Magic the Gathering tags that we're going to be giving away to some of the lucky contributors to that show. So if you'd like to be entered in that drawing, email us with your geocaching.com screen name, the subject show 300 feedback, and our email address, of course, is geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, and give us your feedback. The better it is, the more likely it is to make it on the show. And because we have this contest and a show 300, we've got the feedback stacking up. Chris, have you looked at that doc lately?
I have not, and I want it to be a surprise around show 300.
That's a good idea, because we've got a lot of stuff in there, some really good comments and questions. So it's going to be a good show, and definitely we're going to have to take that into the patron episode, and I think we're going to have to make that patron bonus free to everyone. So just too much content for one show.
But Daryl, you just mentioned patrons. And we can't leave a show without saying thank you to our patrons. So if you support us, we want to say thank you. You guys keep this show going. Now, if you want to know more, head on over to the cachemaniacs.com website, and you can find out what it takes to become a patron.
And get a bunch of that bonus stuff, including the patron picks, or the host picks. And we've got some good ones in there. But, some of that stuff is also free after a certain amount of time. So if you want to go check that stuff out, head over to the patron site anyway and see what you can get and get a preview of what's going on over there. But we do have a number of shows coming up as well, obviously. So next week, we're going to have Limax on to talk about GPS tech some more. That's going to get really geeky. I love it. And then on the 21st, we're going to talk about going smartphone from GPSR. Yes, there are still a number of people that prefer to use GPSR and don't use the smartphone much. But even for those of us who use the smartphone primarily, this is probably going to be a really good show. Well, they're all really good shows. But Jennifer of Team HAK is going to be on that one. And she's just recently been making the switch herself, where it's kind of this organic thing that people just start using the smartphone more and more, and realize one day, hey, I'm not using my GPS so much. As Chris looks for where his GPS is
I
hiding.
think it's on my bike right now. Like it normally hangs behind me. It's not hanging behind me. It's on my bike.
I have several hanging behind me, and the problem is they're hanging back there, and they've been hanging there for months.
Well, I have a couple hanging back here as well, or sitting back here, but you know, they're more for show. I've got a really old one that it's not worth powering up.
See, I want to power some of these up again, but like one of them has a proprietary charge port and charger that I can't seem to find after the move. And I just am really curious because I never liked this unit to begin with. It was a cool concept, but it just didn't work very well. Anyway, but the 28th is going to be that show 300. So make sure to join us for that episode. And Land Monkey is going to be joining us. Might have a couple of other surprises, but at least Land Monkey is going to be there. Then on the 6th, we have the Northwest Geooh. So caching in the Northwest is going to take over GeoGearHeads.
Daryl, you may have made a mistake, but you'll have to wait until October 6th to find out.
Just one mistake?
Well, we'll see after October 6th. Until then, make sure you check the Cache-A-Maniacs website at cacheamaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners. So leave us feedback by emailing GeoGearHeads at cacheamaniacs.com or through the many channels of social media. Your support helps keep the Cache-A-Maniac shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cache-A-Maniac shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umpenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. The show's copyright 2017 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cache with a cache